kind of maintenance you've done over the last 8 years on that tank.
3 years ago was the last time it was done.
But I suspect it hasn't been maintained like it should be.
How often should we be maintained?
I mean, it should be taken out of service at least once a year and cleaned. Conditions in a given system can vary, and you might be able to go 2 or 3 years. It just kind of depends on the system. There's sediment that settles at the bottom. There's corrosive water, and there's all kinds of conditions that might change that maintenance schedule. But I think once a year it should be taken out of service and at least looked at, and if there are signs of corrosion or other problems, then they should be fixed. That's what I would recommend without knowing anything else.
With the larger storage tank, is it required to have a larger pump, a larger well?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. And that's frankly part of why we want to do the water model, is because the water model helps us answer those type of questions. Is the pump the right size for the tank? We know there's storage in the service area. Is the pump turning on and off at the right times? Is it cycling too much? Is it getting worn out? And these are all things that these are all questions that we answer with the water model.
Even the size of the new tank?
The size, yes. The water model will help us accurately predict what size the tank needs to be put the optimum size based on your current service needs, your future development, and those type of variables.
So you would say to do the water model first before we attempt?
I would like to, yes. If you want me to guess at the size of the tank, I'd be happy to do that. I'd rather have a water model that gives me that answer with some certainty and some improvements.
Would the water model just be for that one, or is it be for all of them?
No, the water modeling proposals you have in front of you is for the whole city system. And of course, the plasma tank, well, and the elevator storage tank only service part of the city. There's whole other service areas that we'd like to get modeled as well.
Do we have any citizens' comments on this?
So just so I can understand, this tank that we're talking about, when you initially made this assessment, we went out for bid, when was that?
We went out for bid late September. I think we had 2 or 3 weeks of bidding activity.
This September?
Yes.
When did you first assess the actual?
We never assessed the
You
tank
never.
itself. When we were hired to do the design of the new tank, we obviously went out to the site, took many pictures, but our inspection was only from the outside. We didn't have access to the inside. I think the hatches were very difficult to access. And Andrew would let us on the roof because it's not safe. What we saw from the outside, obviously you can see from the picture, you can see the corrosion that has shown on the outside. What that is water trickling down from the roof, from the hatches where it's susceptible to the humidity. That told us nothing about the inside. And once we got the report that showed us what was going on in the interior, we said we shouldn't really put any money into that tank. I mean, it's not.
But initially, you set out a bid to put money into the tank, right?
We did an alternate bid just to replace the roof, which we knew had severe corrosion and needed to be replaced.
Have you seen these reports prior to your assessment?
No.
They were done in January.
Yes.
I too felt the same way you felt when you saw this.
I don't see.
There's 3 of them.
Are there additional?
Not quite.
This action item, you're just asking us to reject the bid.
Correct.
That's what I'm recommending, yes.
I'll go and make the motion to approve the MS engineer recommendations for the positive water tank bid.
Second?
Okay, a motion by Councilman Rodriguez, second by Councilman Nieto, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we have any other executive session? Don't leave.
We could grow it a little bit more. Not quite well done.
Well, the next item, then you have before you a fee proposal for
Consideration and action to approve engineering services to perform a water model. Now,
Okay. The water modeling is something that M&S identified in the comprehensive plan back in 2000.
2 years ago, I think it was brought up.
3 or 4 years ago, to do, it's a very normal thing to have for a system of this size, serving a population of 6, 7, 8,000 people. It's odd that you don't have this. You know, providing water to your citizens is a very important and basic function of the city. And it's important to have a diagnostic tool that tells you how it runs, how the system would be impacted by future developments, you know, what impact certain outages might have. I mean, it's just a wonderful tool to have. And it's something that can be used very easily and very quickly. If Andrew were to encounter a problem, he can call, he can sit down on the computer and punch in a few things and tell him what might happen and give him some good advice, you know, on the fly. It's just a great tool. I think more of it as a long-term investment. I know it's a lot of money, but over the years, it will actually save you a lot of money and help you generate some revenue. And I'll give you an example. I know the Riverbend development, we've been negotiating agreements and discussing that for quite some time. I'm not privy to exactly where you are, but obviously that development will have some impact on your water system. I don't know exactly what that impact is with this water model. I can tell you what the impact is, and I can turn that impact into a dollar value that you can use to negotiate with the development. And that's revenue coming to the city that they can use to put back into the water system. We can use this model to develop capital improvement programs that you can use for the basis of future impact fees. I think it's long overdue for the city of Floresville to impose impact fees on new development. It's revenue, it's revenue, and frankly, your water system can use it. It will help us come up with a routine maintenance program for the city. You know, how often do you take down your tanks and work on them? How often should a pump be taken out of service and brought into the shop and worked on and replaced? These are all things that we can determine for the city using this water model. And as you all know, I mean, you know, a few dollars of maintenance on a regular basis really helps avoid those catastrophes in the future. Your system goes down, you have a lot of unhappy customers, and you're losing revenue because you're not selling water. So it's an investment, and that's the way I would like you to think of it. I realize it's a lot of money, but over the years, it will actually save you money and help bring you revenue.
Will this water model actually help in the issuance of grants?
I would say indirectly, yes. Probably not directly. I mean, I don't know that.
Mainly giving more information to.
Yes, it's used to substantiate needs, so to speak, and that helps get you that.
What goes into creating a water model?
Oh, okay.
But in simple terms.
In simple terms, what we'll do is we'll do some site reconnaissance. We'll visit all your sites. We'll sit down with Andrew and all the folks that operate the system and basically ask them, where are your problems? What do you struggle with on a daily basis? How do you operate the system? It's basically operated by hand. so that we understand kind of how it works. And then we'll take all the city maps, which are in run, yeah, and we'll modernize those. We'll put them into the computer. You'll have the ability to print. So we'll modernize your maps. We'll plug that information into a model and get it running. And then when we're happy with the way it's running, we'll calibrate. Okay, and we'll take that model. We'll sit down with Andrew and his operators, and we'll get the model running as you run the system today. And then once we've got it calibrated, then we can start playing. We can start plugging in scenarios to see what impacts are. We can start looking at where your deficiencies might be. There might be areas in the city where you have a little low pressure. There may be areas in the city where you don't have proper fire flows, or you don't have any fire flows. And then we can turn that information, into specific recommendations about what you should do to your system and when. So that's fundamentally the scope. Now, there is one more item in the scope, and that is to specifically look at the riverbend development and understand what impact it has on your system, and then turn that into dollars so that you can begin to understand what the impact is and hopefully work with the developer.
And you said that this would take us off the paper maps and put it computerized?
Absolutely.
Does that mean that a developer would be able to access that, would we have it on our internet?
Yes, once we get it into a computerized format, those maps can be given to anybody that we want.
It will actually define what your water system is, so that we can know what our capacity is as we grow, what the impact is, if they come online and tap on. It'll help us to be able to do that. But right now, currently, we don't have any of that documentation in place.
And then Andrew, whoever's designated, would be able to go up in there and update if things change or something new comes in?
That you'd be able to.
So he would have access to keep it current?
It would be some like, a new subdivision coming, I can do the FOIAs and
And probably.
get the contractor's plan, and see how the houses are gonna be. I can kinda do a branch to look at how we're gonna run the rock with the water. And with the waste model coming, then I can do both. And that would be ideal.
Okay, and then the big question, how much? Well, approximate.
I think it was about 60,000.
I think it was put on this paper here.
So we'll look at
May I ask a question? To create the water model, you need data.
Yes.
Do we know if we have the data, because you'll need access to system data, billing records, existing maps, and digital files, as well as other physical data the city has on the system. Do we have all of that?
I suspect not, but we will take whatever you give us and work with it.
Okay, so if we don't have the data, how do you create?
Councilman Castillo, may I interrupt a minute?
Yes.
We have about 60% of that,
Okay.
where I can work with them on the water distribution system with that. All the new stuff that's come in, it's not there, but with the model coming, that water distribution, that can be added as we're going along.
We currently don't have a SCADA system for it.
No, I would love to have one, but
Yeah, and that's
But
one of the things.
it's beneficial for, because it could be,
It
transpose into
helps you
scale.
optimize your system and run it with the fewest amount of electricity kilowatts. And that's probably a recommendation that would come out of the water model.
Henry, have we talked to anybody else about providing us a water model?
No, we didn't get any other bids. We only have 2 engineers that you all have approved, which is Burr Engineer and NS, and Burr Engineer is very heavily weighted down with
Yeah,
everything.
possible, looking for another engineer?
You could
I mean, just
order-
compare pricing, I mean,
Yes.
I know you want to hear about that. I know. Yeah.
I'm not comfortable telling you this, but that's inappropriate. It's against the law for a governmental entity in the state of Texas to bid engineering services. The way it is supposed to work is you select somebody that you feel is qualified, and
Well, I'm
then
asking this, so we can find another engineer who's qualified, so we can have 3 engineers to choose from, just in case in a couple of months if you're busy and then Barry's busy, then we won't have anybody to use.
I believe the 3 engineers that you pre-qualified for city work are all qualified to do this.
And one is no longer in service.
Well, the company itself is no longer there. They have some engineers that were there, have gone off and started their own company in reference to do that. But I haven't had long-term conversations with them in reference to that, because M&S did your comprehensive plan, and M&S was doing some of the other work, and so that's why I went to M&S.
And then we only have 60% of the data, so.
Right. I apologize, it looks like the third page of his letter was actually not copied.
In response to your question about the fee, we're asking for a not to exceed amount of $60,000. $60,000.
What about staff time? How long is it going to take? So this is it, working with staff. What does that mean?
It's not going to be a burden on city staff. We'll sit down and meet with them and gather all the information we can, and 99% of work is done by us. So Andrew will be free to keep the system going.
Okay.
And the fact that you don't have all the information is not unusual at all, okay? Anytime you go in there and model a system for the first time, you're always going to be working with partial information you wish you had more, but that's just something we deal with every day. Not a big deal.
I'll ask this question very carefully.
Yes.
Knowing that that tank needs to be repaired, because we have no option on that, we're gonna put that to the side to go with this, because we need to have this to know what size we're gonna have to build. Okay. If it comes to where we need water and something happens to that tank, we can shut that one down and still use the other tanks to provide water.
Based on what I know, and this is, comes through from working with Andrew, but right now you're repairing your well. So you've been basically operating off the old
That and hospital.
So your system can limp along, so to speak. And it works.
Have we added that other motor to the Beach Street well?
That, I'm gonna have to set up a meeting with Lizette, so we can discuss the, what is the piece of felt that they're saying that I cannot add.
So no?
Yes.
Okay.
I know you're very concerned about the tank.
I'm concerned about the water.
And so am I. I mean, from a structural point of view, I don't think it's gonna fall down anytime.
I was more
soon.
concerned about it pumping 650 instead of the 1200 or the 2000.
It's the inside that worries me, just a lot of stuff. But as I understand from Andrew, your water testing has gone well, and it's still well above the minimum. So it's something that we need to address, and we need to address as soon as we can. But I don't think anybody's in any other danger.
How will this help our impact fees?
The water model allows us to identify your system deficiencies. It also allows us to understand the impact of development on the system, and that's where your impact fees really come in. When somebody develops property, it puts a stress on your system that has to be mitigated, and this allows us to determine what it is and equate that into dollars. And that's what you need to set an impact. You need to know how much it costs to upgrade your system.
And you ought to be able to provide us that information.
Absolutely. So in essence, this helps you get the impact fee in place, and you can take that money, and it basically pays for itself and brings you in revenue over years.
And that goes for the same as the sewer model that you're working on as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is our comptroller still here?
Yes.
We don't have $60,000 in the budget for this, or we suggest we get the money.
We will have to, when we do a budget amendment, we're hoping to do the money that you're not gonna fix the tank with, that you have a capital expenditure to be used in one month.
And also, the utilities fund is not on a deficit. They're like a $4 million balance on the fund balance. So we can always make a budget amendment to go ahead and pay for it.
So at the end of the day, we're gonna vote back, get the bigger tank,
And do the budget amendment. But you cannot spend too much either because of the USDA obligation.
Because you need to have
You
so
need
much
to
in
have
reserves.
a certain, yes, for that match.
Would we exceed, or we still got it, we just have to be conservative about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with your development agreement, but is it possible if there is an impact that's identified, that the developer can help offset that? Is there a provision in there?
There's language in the PDD that we just approved to say that if we can say that because of this thing, it's impacted us, and then we can revisit that reference to negotiate how he can help us underwrite it. But right now, you don't have any impact fees at all in reference to that. So we need to pass an impact fee ordinances and talk about how it impacts our system. And then we will have this model, hopefully, that the model can show that because he's doing over, I think it's 10 years of 740 homes, it directly impacts us how.
Is this something that needs to be approved tonight, or can we wait after Mrs. Wagner looks at our records?
We won't have, Pat Wagner from the auditing company won't be able to do anything assessing. Her first visit is when?
Her first, the field work is gonna be done January 5th to the 16th. And then the final audit is gonna be done on February 26th. And the reason for that is because of their timing schedule, they couldn't fit us in December, so they're gonna have to wait until January.
And how long does it take to complete the one?
I think you were asking. As soon as I spoke.
Sorry. 2 weeks?
No.
Madam Mayor, while he's looking,
Yes, sir.
I think there's two questions that Lou needs to answer for you, the council. Several years ago, he asked the council at the time if they could go to M&S and get a water model. And I'm wondering if that ever came to fruition, and if so, because my memory says that the initial guess 2 or 3 years ago was around $35,000 to do it. And the second question is, since it's already been briefed tonight, that you're going to be looking at annexation, that water models are required for you legally to annex. Is that not true on both of my issues? So you have to have it. It's not an option.
Mayor, I would just like to say that I find it quite commendable of the mayor and the council to be proactive for a change, and especially when it comes to water, which is very definitely our basis of what we need for sustenance. But to be proactive is a wonderful step to see you take, and I think you should vote on it tonight. Thank you.
You're here.
In response to your question about schedule, much of our initial work can be done in the first 60 90 days. And then all the work should be complete within about 5 or 6 months. And it just takes some time to gather the information and get it plugged in and work.
How's it paid out? I can mail it.
Bill, you want to let me take this, but if you don't like that, we can negotiate any payment terms that.
What county area code is it? Because we're gonna switch from the other to that.
I agree with the whole water module that needs to be done. My whole thing is, a couple action items before, we looked at a project that was incomplete and was put out to bid because it lacked information. And then now number 2, we're jumping to a water model, and I understand you're saying by law that we can't, shop the module. But I mean, we need to have a second alternative, for a engineering company than just having one choice, saying, okay, you're stuck, but this is your pre-approved, and this is all there is, and here, you gotta go with it. We've gotta have options.
We did
We
have
have,
a
I
second.
mean, I understand you didn't have the information, I don't know whose fault that is, that you didn't have the information or we didn't provide it, but we put a project out to bid, that was incomplete. And here we were, if we would've gotten a good bid, we were gonna put in money into a project that we shouldn't have.
Well,
And that was off of your recommendation.
The base bid was entirely appropriate, correct. It would have built a new 80,000 gallon. It would have been inappropriate had we selected the alternative and repaired the roof on the existing
The
tank.
thing is, we went through the steps to perform that job.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, either we, like I said, either we didn't provide you other information, or you didn't do the right research to properly repair that facility.
What, I think what, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but what transpired is that this was done in January, and this wasn't given to them.
Until a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know, but you're the engineer. I mean, if you're repairing something, you should know either, okay, is this gonna repair it, or later on we're gonna have to put another $200,000 into it. I mean, that's what we're paying you for, correct?
We put together the documents based on the best information we had. This information was requested on several occasions, and it didn't come to us until a couple of weeks ago.
And that's the only reason I'm requesting to have more options. I mean, I understand, I guess, if it's legal that we can't go for bid on it, I understand that, but we've got to have more than one option, saying this is, you know, this is all there is here, this is it, take it. And like the gentleman said out here, he said, remembers a couple of years it was 35,000. Now a couple of years later, now it's 60,000.
The law provides you an option of terminating negotiations with us and then moving on to another qualified firm. That is your option according to the law. I don't know where the $35,000 figure came from. We provided the city of Floresville a fee proposal about 2 years ago to do the overall system modeling, and that amount was right around $50,000. The difference of $10,000 is to specifically look at the river bend development to see what the impact is. And that's the difference. We simply took the proposal we did a few years ago and we added the river bend scope of work to it. And that was the price.
Can I ask a question? It may be silly. One of the purposes of the water model was to be able to deal with developments, to be able to project what requirements are going to be it a new home on the end of a line, what is it going to do to the pressure, or a new subdivision. If we delete the riverbed model of this, the 10,000 for that, theoretically we should be able to calculate what that impact is going to be when you're done with the water model and the system. Our people should be able to do that. But the challenge to that, and I think the reason that they added that into it now, is because of the lack of formalized impact fees and needing to know what that impact is to deal with the development agreement that gives us the ability to go back to the Riverbend folks and say, hey, this development of 100 homes over the next 7 years is going to put this kind of strain on our system, and be able to get those dollars from that Riverbend piece. That's my understanding of it, okay? The water model clearly is something that has to be done. I support that and have fought for the water and sewer models for years, because you can't build when you don't know what you already have. And you can't plan for tomorrow if you don't know what you already have. And we saw that with the paper maps and not being able to predict this. Right now, we don't have the ability to say, you know, if we're going to put another house at the end of a water line, if all the other people along that line are still going to have adequate pressure. We don't have that ability. You know, this is a critical piece if this city is going to grow. And Councilor, I would also ask you to explain the request for qualification process that allowed us to acquire M&S Engineering.
I can try to answer that. As I understand it, we responded to a request for qualifications that was issued by the city of Floresville. I believe the city of Floresville received a number of qualification statements from a number of firms. 3. You've received 3. And the city deemed those firms qualified. And I believe in a council action, approve the use of those three firms for
Correct.
any services that the city of Floresville may require. And that,
And I think the part that, if I may, the part that Mr. Nieto needs a little twist around the usual contracting program is, under the Professional Services Procurement Act, which is the PSPA, the engineering profession has got the legislature to agree that you look at qualifications first. And that means looking at their peer groups, looking at whoever responds to requests for proposals, whoever's got the best ability to build a dam, build a road, whatever the thing is that you're trying to build. And after looking at qualifications based on experience, based on complaints, based on all those things that go with assessing them, then you pick what you want as a qualified person or entity, and then you negotiate fees. It's a two-step process. It's not competitive bidding just by throwing it at the wall there when you go to the builder's exchange and you have them come in and price. And I think that's what Mr. Turk is trying to cover. Now, if I might back up about 10 years and give a little background for you. We had Lissy and Munden, or Mundy and Lisson from the Valley, do a water model almost 10 years from Mr., what was his name from the Valley? Was city manager? Cedillo was manager. He brought in a Valley system. Okay, some friendship. I know the firm. I've dealt with the firm. I've been on another side of the case that I was involved in. I understand how they function. They're political. And what happened is you submitted, and I don't mean this group here, but the city of Floresville submitted the data they had to that firm. The data that we had was about 20 steps up from zero, about 80 steps short of being useful. And after you spent $70,000, you can look this up, Andrew, I've got a copy in my office. After you spent $70,000 to do the water model, you got a report back that said, if we had adequate data, we could do it. But in the meanwhile, here's our bill for $70,000.
Oh,
Okay?
so the
So-
60,000 is nothing.
So 60,000 compared to what you paid 10 years ago, or whatever it is not a great deal of money. The modeling programs, Bentley or some of the others, have all improved immeasurably since EPA model came out. So the modeling system, the technical side of this is much improved, and you're gonna get a much better product than you would have from those folks. But Jim is correct, Tom is correct, Mr. Nieto's correct, Andrew's correct. We've gotta have a water model, just like we have to have a sewer model. And you've got an engineering firm standing in front of you. I recommend you commit them. I recommend you commit them with the caveat tonight that next council's meeting to have the budget amendment that covers that, so that that budget amendment can keep you on the straight and narrow for budgeting purposes. But that you go ahead and approve them so they know this is coming, and so they can get off and get started. Bentley's a good system. I'm familiar with it.
what we intend to use, the water cat.
And you're gonna use the water CAD system. And let me talk about one other thing that I think is important for the discussion tonight. He's talking the word impact fees. Impact fees are not an easy process.
Right.
If you tell them it's an easy process, I'll come over there and, but, what you really want is you want to know what the capital cost is for putting major improvements in major water lines down into River Bend, down the rest of your city, and so forth. And then, more importantly, besides knowing the cost, you want to know who's going to pay for it. And the water impact system, or the sewer impact system, works real well for San Antonio for big developments. For big developments. And River Bend is the first one you have that's really of that sort. The problem with the big developments and the impact fees is they don't work well in should I say, areas that have been built over 80 or 100 years and have a long history. You can't go to those people and say, we're gonna slap you with an impact fee, because they're the people that have paid for the system through equity debt over the years. So,
Basically, Riverbend would be perfect candidate.
that's correct. So, we got about three things going on here, so let me back up a minute. We need to say yes to his proposal. We need to do the budgeting at a subsequent meeting for keeping your budget, keeping Connie and the manager on the straight for the audit. And then thirdly, we need to give him a deadline for the scope of this project and probably phase it, so Riverbend is first and this tank is number 1A.
Actually, the two will be simultaneous.
Okay. And I think those are appropriate for you to do. They're forward-looking steps, as you pointed out. They fit as a perfect complement to what you're trying to do with your sewer. And to get your utility side of your shop up and running. And so I think they're really important steps to take tonight, and without further ado, I'd recommend you approve it.
So, Mr. Rosenberg,
Yes, ma'am.
since we only have 60% of the data, perhaps, we won't repeat the deal event again, will we?
No.
What was his name?
No, the manager that we were talking about 10 years ago was. But that was largely, I saw the correspondence, that was largely our fault. Their firm wrote to Floresville and asked for information, and unfortunately, we had very little of it written down, and we needed to go do field testing. We needed to go put meters at the hydrants, which Andrew does. We needed to say how deep the water lines were in the ground. We needed to say the size of those lines, and we didn't have that data.
So we have that today.
We have most of that today.
Yes.
We'll still have to do some testing. And there's nothing wrong with the testing. If I can take a second and explain it to you, and Tom, if you want to chime in.
That's okay, it's already 9:30.
Thank you, Sharon.
Just turn into a pumpkin.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg.
Okay,
I'm going to make the motion to approve engineering services to perform the water model.
I have a motion by Councilman Rodriguez, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Guerrero, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We'll expect this report in 3 months. Looking to see if you're not on here anymore.
better before they change.
Yes, you may. Okay, now we're gonna go on to item 4, executive session, and I'm gonna skip around. I'm going to move to number 5. Pursuant to section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code Personnel Matters, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, appointment of municipal court prosecutor. With that, may I have a motion to go into executive session?
I move we go into executive session. Skip over to.
We have a motion by Councilman Nieto, second by Councilman Castillo, all in favor? We don't have a board meeting to go into, so we're gonna have to ask y'all to step out. Sheriff's office.
And then try to move that.